Ah yes, Jaime Lannister, the tale of a corrupt knight who pushes a kid from a tower to protect his evil sister lover and their inbred children. Then loses his hand, finds a gal with inner beauty, learns to solve conflicts without fighting, chooses to fight for the good guys, and then comes back and kills his evil sister lover in order to save the city. A true redemption arc? Since we're talking redemption arcs, I want to start by bringing up one of the OG redemption arcs in all of fiction. That's right, Ebenezer Scrooge. In Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge is this greedy old miser who's mean to everyone and hates Christmas. So, as the story goes, one Christmas Eve, 3 spirits show up and reveal to him the error of his ways. By morning, Scrooge is transformed and he becomes the most friendly, charitable, Christmas-loving guy in town. Redemption arc complete.
A goose for everyone!
It's stories like this which have primed us on what to expect from redemption arcs. The hateful becomes friendly. The liar becomes truthful. The selfish becomes selfless. And once they do, the character is never an enemy or dishonest or selfish ever again. But is that how people really are? And is that really what we're getting from Game of Thrones?
All of us have to believe that we're decent, don't we? You have to sleep at night. How do you tell yourself that you're decent after everything that you've done?
While Jaime has always been one of the most popular and best written characters in Game of Thrones, it's actually been a long-standing subject of fan debate whether his is truly a redemption arc. And that's in a lot of ways by design, since the moment he reveals how he saved King's Landing from certain doom, the audience realizes that there's real good in this man who we once saw as a ruthless villain. After all, he desperately wants to believe in honor and chivalry. He's kind to his outcast of a little brother, and the seemingly evil things he does for love. Yes, it's toxic, narcissistic twincest, but it's love, and all of that works to make him a pretty admirable guy. Yet, those are things that have always been true of Jaime Lannister. When we look at the trajectory of Jaime's arc and his actions and his relationship to Cersei, things are a lot less linear than they initially seem. While he mainly spends season 1 and 2 assaulting and murdering people, seasons 3 and 4 have Jaime showing his human side and doing right by Brienne, Sansa, and Tyrion. And season 5 has him go on a risky, albeit pointless and badly written, mission to not only rescue his daughter, but also come clean about being her father. But then, season 6 has Jaime try to emulate his father, threatening to catapult a baby and working alongside evil men like Walder Frey to put down a resistance that only exists because of a war his family started.
Here we are now, 2 Kingslayers.
So it's no surprise that the peace Jaime establishes in the Riverlands lasts for all of 1 episode before descending back into rebellion. And while we can argue that Jaime was there making the best of an already bad situation, that's really kind of the point. A person can only redeem themselves so much when they're bound to an evil cause. And this is where we start to see the limits of Jaime's redemption. It's really easy to watch season 7 and root for Jaime Lannister. After all, he's an underdog fighting a defensive war against the seemingly unstoppable Dragon Queen. Yet, we can't ignore the reality that regardless of our feelings about Daenerys, Cersei is actually illegitimate. She's committed multiple atrocities, has been rejected by the nobility and common people alike, and is doing nothing good for anyone's well-being. Cersei's hold on power is tyrannical and maintained mostly for vanity and spite. So, Jaime fights this war not for the people, or for peace, or because it's right, but
For Cersei.
And you know, of all the motivations a person can have, Love is far from the worst. The fact is, we haven't been rooting for Jaime all this time because he was always doing the right thing, but because he always had admirable motivations. Sadly, this also points to the limitation of Jaime's redemption arc. Throughout the narrative, Jaime absolutely improves as a person, trading in the hegemonic masculinity of his Kingslayer persona for a more pragmatic attempt at Golden Hands of the Just, coming to admire Brienne and regaining some faith in true knighthood, honoring promises and risking his life at Winterfell for the good of all mankind. Yet, like certain other characters we know, in the end, Jaime faces a conflict of love versus duty, and ultimately, Jaime's anchor is love.
What? She never fooled you. You always knew exactly what she was. And you loved her anyway.
Though many expect Jaime would come to his senses in the end and strangle Cersei to death in order to save King's Landing, that's not really what Jaime's story is. Jaime doesn't need to finally see Cersei for the Mad Queen she is. He's known all along. As Tyrion recognizes, Jaime's love is unconditional, and while he has his disagreements with her, and he has his moments of rebellion and disobedience, the thing Episode 4 showed us definitively is that Jaime cannot truly let go of Cersei. She's a part of him, not only because they're twins, and not only because she's actually carrying his child, but because she's a defining aspect of who he's been his entire life. His constant. And as far as the Valonqar prophecy, it's not actually in the show. And in the books, you should reread it. The Valonqar prophecy describes a mercy kill of a completely broken woman. Something that audiences have often struggled to make sense of about Game of Thrones is how characters relapse. A character will seem like they're on one trajectory, then suddenly they'll fall back into old habits. For example, Theon overcomes his traumatized Reek persona to courageously help Sansa escape Winterfell and stand up for his sister at the Kingsmoot. But then, he has a flashback and he cowers before his uncle. Stannis refuses to sacrifice his daughter, all up until the moment that he sacrifices his daughter. Arya turns away from her list and goes to reunite with her family, and later leaves them to pursue vengeance yet again. And Jaime leaves Cersei to honor his pledge and fight the good fight, and even acknowledges his feelings for Brienne, but then decides to go back to Cersei. And while this is frustrating for those looking to see an uplifting story of internal growth, it's also something about the narrative which is fundamentally true. Real people don't have redemption arcs and don't change in linear ways. Relapse is part of human nature, not just for drug addicts, but for everyone consumed with a goal, behavior, or relationship. Essentially, Jaime Lannister's story explores the limits of redemption, asking, can a person who has done so much evil and been embedded with so many toxic influences fully escape who they were? While it's hopeful to believe that all of us can be redeemed regardless of what we've done, life doesn't always afford us the chance to move on from our past. Though Jaime tries to regain his honor and is propelled towards self-betterment by Brienne, he can't fully let go of Cersei or the part of him which she represents. We see this really clearly when Jaime realizes that Cersei's doom is inevitable. In this moment, Jaime's suddenly overcome with guilt, not just over having left Cersei and his unborn child to die a fiery death, but over the flawed, hateful part of himself that Cersei represents. Jaime's weird, incestuous, unconditional love for Cersei pushes him to do horrible things. But ask yourself this. What kind of a man would he really be if he could live happily ever after with Brienne and abandon Cersei and his unborn child to die? If Jaime could let go of the flawed, toxic love which anchors him, Would he really be the guy we've been rooting for? The irony here is that the motivation which makes us want to see Jaime redeemed is also the thing which prevents him from fully achieving redemption. And while that's ultimately the tragedy of Jaime Lannister, it's also the beauty of his story. He's a man that, above all else, champions crazy, stupid love.